Why, hi there, it's me, Uncle Ron, and gonna do a few minutes to chat about a topic that Dave and I've been talking about. Not sure that the two of us can get a half hour out of it, so I'll just post it for something for me to do and get some money from the folks of you who watch on YouTube. Greatly appreciate it. As you know, Dave and I stream a lot of games, and we've found over the years as we go further and further along the trail that those that have some sort of computer background or computer assist do a heck of a lot better in explaining games and showing off games than those that are just pure cards and dice. Trying to get card images to look good, having some sort of computer scoreboard on the screen so you can follow what's going on is essential. Uh, but again, it takes a lot more work to make that happen, to make it something visual for you to be able to see and follow along with, because those of us who play the stream the games also are playing the games. And so I know for me, there's always a mix and combo of trying to explain the game rules or game action that you see and do the type of immersion that you normally would get from, let's just say, if I do an action PC stream or Dave does something with on the anyone that does a computer stream, because you can see the visuals on the computer. It really doesn't matter how A plus B equals C. What matters is, you get the enjoyment out of it, whether it's a fight or a football game or a hockey game or a baseball game. Doing cards and dice is always much more of a challenge. There, you won't notice that edit at all. It's much more of a challenge because not only, as I said, you have to play the game, but you have to hope that your audience understands the engine that you're playing. That so you're kind of half explaining the rules, half explaining the results on the cards, and trying to build that excitement as any sports or entertainment stream is. You want to find a way to be involved. Now, if you're a fan of Strat or APA or some of the Playdot games, if you've played one of those, then those games are going to kind of translate well out to a card and dice on with the camera and the notepad experience. Baseball Demos does a lot with this, and he does very well with it because he pretty much focuses on the score sheet, tells you what the roles are. So if you play a lot of Status Pro or familiar with Status Pro or Stratomatic or APA or History Maker Baseball or wherever else he shows off on his channel, you're going to be able to follow along. But the meat and potatoes of this, what happens when you play a game that is maybe not as established as, the big ones, Strat or APA? Let's talk about a Payoff Pitch, or History Maker Baseball, or History Maker Golf, or Hockey Bones, which is Dave's forte at the moment, or Pocket Pennant Run Baseball, or any one of the myriad of games that are great fun to play, but don't translate well to the full bells and whistles of a YouTube stream. Why? Again, if I watch someone play Stratomatic on a YouTube stream, I know how Stratomatic plays. I know how to play Super Advanced, Basic, how to read the cards, what the dice rolls are going to be pretty much as they come off. I can speak the language. There's not much translation that you need, and for if it's a game engine that I'm familiar with, it's easier to get the viewer, in this case me, involved in the immersion because I know the game. But a game that maybe I don't know, it's harder because you kind of get lost. Well, how does that work? Or, geez, here's just another way to play hockey or baseball or football or basketball or whatever, and what do those symbols mean? And you're trying your best to explain how the game goes, but get lost in it. I mean, I was watching Dave is playing currently, as I tape this on the 19th day of May, a Stanley Cup final from '71 in Hockey Bones, and he's doing his darndest and doing a very good job of explaining how it goes and this and that and the dice rolls. But it takes about an hour for him to do a period, and you, as a streamer, as an entertainer, your brain starts to fog because you're trying to make sure that I kind of can figure out what's going on and actually move along the play and resolve the play. And if you're doing it live, check the chat. And at some point, your brain is just going to turn to mush as the person playing the game, and it becomes no fun. Also, if you're looking to buy, let's say, a new type of game, Roberto Savini's game's a good example of these. Classic F1, which I had to do 3 introductory videos just to go through how to set up and play one race. Motorsport from Owlsat Games, which I love and is very easy to play. But how do I show it off? How do I show off those tremendous Roberto Savini games that are very easy to play, are very exciting, but visually watching, standing over someone's shoulder and roll to see how fast somebody ran 25 meters or swam 50 meters or did a gymnastics routine or a figure skating routine is boring as anything, because you're the one that's relying on the person showing off the game to build that excitement for you. And if I'm trying to figure out, okay, this one's an A and that one's an H, and I gotta look at the table to see how to read it and then produce the result, again, on your own, it's great, it's immersive, it builds drama, and that's exactly how you want to do the draw to doing cards and dice games. How do you go and build drama from any of this to make it like, oh, I want to do that again, whether it's a super inaccurate result or an upset or something that comes right down to the last turn or whatever. But, as far as watching it is concerned, it's just that extra step of the person trying to play it to explain it, play the game, show you the results. I mean, it's some of this stuff is just Excel things. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, for me, Excel is the same as writing a pen and paper for that. But trying to do all those steps and show off why I like the game or why I like this engine or why that can be very difficult to do. And I think it kind of gives some cards and dice games that maybe aren't as popular as others a bum rap, because there are a ton of games out there, but that are tremendous, just absolutely tremendous games. But because most of the people who are going to stumble by your channel to watch or are looking for information on it, you're going to get lost on it. I remember talking with Dave about the first 2 or 3 APBA hockey videos he watched. He couldn't make heads or tails out of it. You get lost on it. Well, Dave, not to pick on poor Dave, but he wasn't really familiar with how APBA games flow. As someone who's played a bunch of APBA baseball, I knew that the results and the charts become memorable. You can memorize them in pretty much short order. And then our friend Gilles Thibault did a video on how to play APBA hockey, and the first 30 seconds that I watched of it, I knew for Dave it was going to click. And it absolutely did. We've also talked about on the show, and Dave and I have talked about it off the air, how games, the Play.com games such as Red, White, and Blue Racing, History Maker Golf, History Maker Baseball to a degree, for those who don't know how the game is played, it is a very confusing experience, and you're going to lose something trying to figure it all out. Steve Tower does a tremendous job, an absolutely bang-up job showing those games and playing them, and because he does a lot with fictional teams, you can get the sense and joy that he gets from playing those on camera and showing those off. But if you don't know the language, it's just kind of lost. And if you're looking on buying those games, yes, Steve's enthusiasm for the Play.com games comes through. Peter Miller our dear friend Hockey Unreal Patch, for those of you uninitiated, and Dave do a very good job all showing off the hockey games in their collection. But if you're not familiar with how the engine works, it just looks very daunting. And every cards and dice game does it a different way. APA goes on charts and play result numbers. The Play.com games go a lot with different characteristics, and if this happens, then one thing happens, and if that happens, another thing happens. The Shivini games are all basically rolled off of tables. And again, very good games, very exciting games, and every time I pull one out, I enjoy it. But as far as showing it off to an audience, they're just kind of smile and nod and move on to something else. Trying to do an instructional video for, let's say, the classic F1 game, which is an extremely deep Formula One game with a very high learning curve, the payoff is absolutely worth it. The experience feels like an auto race on a lap by lap or lap by 3 laps or whatever going on. But try to do that and explain it and keep it into a time limit that's going to match an attention span is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible. I can't figure out how to do it because, again, I have to play the game, record the results. People skip around videos all the time. And on a computer game or a computer-assisted game, that's easy to do. You just kind of go to the parts that you want. But when you're doing, let's say, again, classic F1, and it's a 50-lap race, and you might have 45 rolls, 45 different segments on that race to get it, yes, it's exciting because you don't know what you're going to get from one thing to another or what kind of car the drivers are going to have from one race to another and all that. But if you don't know what's going on, it's just going to look like a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet. And it makes it very difficult to try to break these games out into the community when it's just almost impossible to make it look like something that you can make sense out of. Again, going back to the most common discussion about a Play.com game is I didn't realize how easy it was to play, how much fun it was to go through. Some of their games are quite complex, especially if you do a tournament in, let's say, History Maker Golf, until I actually played the game. I've heard that from several different people. Dave and I were talking about Hockey Bones. It is a mishmash of letters and numbers and symbols with dice rolls, and there's no fast action cards. And so how do you get from point A to point B? And so, again, Hockey Unreal and Peter Miller did some wonderful videos and trying to explain to how the game mechanics worked. But until you buy the copy and pull it out and read the directions for yourself, then it clicks. And then it makes sense. And then there's an appreciation of how well they tried to do to show off said game. And Dave is trying to show off said game. But if you're looking at it and going, okay, Dave's done a period and a half a game of Hockey Bones. You look at the time of the video, 2 hours. Do you really want to sit for 2 hours to figure this out? Now, maybe if you're a big fan of whatever it is that he's doing, so probably the Bruins or the Seals or some sort of Stanley Cup final. So if you're a fan of 1970-71 Chicago Blackhawks or Boston Bruins or Montreal Canadiens, yeah, you're probably going to stick around a little longer because you want to hear those names over again. The Keith Magnusons, the Bobby Hulls, the Ken Drydens, the Jean Beliveaus, and maybe just a couple Bruin players too that I'm not going to mention names of because Dave gets enough attention as it is. So seriously, if you've got a skin in the game, you're going to pay attention to. But let's say your jam for hockey is the mid-'80s, and the Ray Bourques and the Glenn Westleys and the Wayne Gretzkys and the Paul Coffeys of the world make sense to you, and they're more than just kind of old pictures or lines of stats on a hockey reference page. If you have living memories of those, that's if someone did one of those streams, it may make more sense to you because you're already familiar with all the players, what the stakes are, what they played for, whatever your happy-go-lucky memory is of that particular time. One of the reasons why I struggle with playing seasons I did 1949 for baseball, and I liked it, but it didn't really catch a lot of people's attention because, again, as great of a story as Pee Wee Reese and Jackie Robinson and Tommy Byrne and Ralph Kiner are, trying to present that even on the computer with visuals to an audience that you'd have to be now in your mid 70s to enjoy just didn't really translate all that well. And so is the same with a lot of these cards and dice games. Even the ones that are done on the computer that are pretty much pure card and dice ports. I'm talking about Strat or any of the Richard Hanna games, Classic Soccer, Time Travel Tennis, the replay baseball and hockey. I don't want to get you excited there. Baseball and basketball, any one of the Strat games. Again, the more you know about the game, the more excited you're going to be to see someone show it off to make that worthwhile. Because, as I said a few minutes ago, you already know how the game is played. And so the immersion factor can kick in easier. And so if you're on the fence, let's say, about a Strat basketball, as a couple people were that I talked to when it was on sale, I did a video on the game a couple of years ago, or talked about how I like the cards or something like that. That is easy to show off because you can show off part of that. And all the Strat games, regardless of sport, kind of play the same anyway. Certainly the APA games kind of sort of all play the same anyway, how you get the results. That's one less of a hurdle. And then if you're a prospective buyer of a Strat game or an APA game, especially Strat on the computer, then you can go, okay, is this experience going to be worth it enough for me to actually put down the money and invest in the game itself, knowing that I probably are not interested in the modern season of said game, and so the price package for Strat, the card image, if that's what you so choose, plus the retro season of your choice. That's easier to do because there's something for you to see. But let's say, I don't want to pick on anyone in particular here. Let's just say that I wanted to show off Motorsport, which I haven't shown off yet. Again, for the value, it's the best value, I think, in one of the best values in gaming, because all you need to play the game are the charts that come with it, and the starting position and finishing position of any car in any race ever, essentially, as long as it's not an endurance race. So if you want to run a NASCAR replay from 1965, you can do it from start to finish. That information is easy out there to find, but to turn that into dice rolls and trying to figure out what I can show with the game and what I can't show with the game, and essentially it's a half-hour game. Me trying to be excited about showing that off is, and you out there looking to be entertained or maybe interested in making the purchase, it's not going to make a lot of sense. And so a game that may not be, that I can talk to you one-on-one about, I can kind of make that sale. Here's the 5 reasons why I like that game. But if I'm trying to play a pure card and dice game on the computer for you to see, everything kind of has to work, and I need to know the game cold. So I'm not going, okay, so I rolled this. Now what does that mean? Now, it happens. It absolutely happens, and there's nothing wrong with getting stuck with that. But if you're on the fence about making the purchase, okay, how much brown sugar do I put into this cookie recipe? That sort of thing. And anytime you kind of start to get lost in the weeds of, wait, I rolled this, that, and the other thing, and now I gotta look at this, and now I gotta look at that, and so it breaks the immersion. And no matter how excited you are, if it breaks the immersion, then you're less likely to buy it, unless you already own it, and then you can kind of go, no, that's you read off a chart 4 instead of chart 3. Again, it's not necessarily how these games are presented, but because they are difficult to show, and because in a manually played game, as any card and dice game is, you're trying to concentrate on a good day, even if you're not doing it on live, on playing the game, playing the game correctly, getting enjoyment out of playing the game, showing off the game, and doing all that without getting brain fried. And that's tough. And so I'll leave it as this. If there's a game that you are interested, that you've heard about and interested in seeing, for me, I think it would be easier just to go back and forth and say, yes, these are the 3 things I liked about it. Tell me what it is about it. It's kind of like going to a tailor and buying a suit. I mean, yeah, you can buy something off the rack and hope it fits when you get home, but just that reassurance of, well, I'm kind of in between sizes, and do I have to get this dry clean, and someone to talk to in the men's department of a nice department store to go through and say, yes, you can return this, once, and we can exchange it, or we can find it in this color, or shorten the sleeves, or hike up. You know where I'm going with this. So, yeah, I think it's important for people to discover new cards and dice games, and I'm glad that people are patient when we show off a game that's kind of off the beaten path. But it's just not as easy to do as some of the others. And so in the comments, just, what games would you like to know more about? That isn't necessarily a Strat or an APBA. And we just go through and talk about it in the comments, because I think, a long convoluted point here, telling you about the game sometimes is easier than showing you the game, because I think part of the fun is a discovery on your own of how these games work, and then at that point, does it click for you? All right, well, thank you very much. We'll talk to you the next time.